right? Because you get bogged down by one question and you spend way too much time on it. So that's the tricky thing about the hard questions. And that's why I advise you really pick and choose which one or two or three or four, depending on your level, of those hard questions you're going to tackle. Because you don't want to get caught up in that time suck, where you get stuck on one problem and you just try to force through it, and you can't. You just suck away time. So you need to pick and choose. And again, based on your practice questions, you know what kind of hard questions you feel most comfortable with. You need to gravitate towards those and see if you can really get those right. Because there, you actually have a chance of getting a hard question right. Some of those hard questions, let's just admit, how many of us can be honest with ourselves, all right? How many of us can recognize that some of those hard questions are just plain beyond our level at this particular point? And again, since many of you are taking the test next month, there's not a whole lot of time to advance to the point where you can answer a lot of these hard questions, you know, within the 2 minutes that is typically allotted per question. So again, pick and choose the kinds of hard questions that you're going to target when you get to that end of the section. All right? So again, those are my overview strategies for the SAT. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a deep dive. We're going to jump right into sentence completion. We're going to do a little bit of that. That's what we're going to do next. First of all, when I talk about sentence completion, what's really important is vocabulary. You've got to work on your vocabulary. And there are ways to do this, you know. In fact, there's a lot of free resources out there. If you go on the internet and Google, you know, SAT word list or top SAT words, top SAT vocabulary words, you're going to come up with a bunch of things that could possibly help you. You know, I've done that, and there's one that I found that's really great, freevocabulary.com. It has about 5,000 common SAT words. Another one is vocabvideos.com/SAT-word-list-HTML. .html. So again, if you need that, I can say that. I can let you know after class or write that up on the chalkboard later. But again, those are a couple of free resources for you, for those of you who just want to get a bunch of words to start working with. Now, what's very important, say you've gotten a bunch of words, 500 words, 1,000 words. How do you tackle actually remembering them, right? That's the hard part, right? It's not about finding it. It's easy to find, free, the beauty of the internet. Gotta love Google. But how do you actually remember these words? That's what I'm going to help you with right now, all right? Number one, focus on root words. It's what we call etymology. Let's take an example. Say you come up with the word abstemious. You're starting with the A's, like everybody does, right? You're going to start with A and go to Z, okay? Sounds crazy, but anyway, say you start that, do that approach, and one of the first words you encounter is abstemious. First of all, does anybody actually know what abstemious means? All right, one or two of you? All right, well, when you're trying to learn this word and you don't know what it means, sometimes looking at the root word is going to help you. Abstemious, what is the root? What is the prefix? What is the first thing that shows up in that word? Ab, yeah, a little bit more. Abst, yes, abst. Okay, good. Now, we have this root word of abst. What other words, this is kind of the thought process you need to go through. What other words start with the same prefix? Anybody think of a word that starts with abs? Yes, abstain. That's correct. Abstain. What does abstain mean? It means to refrain from, all right? To stop yourself from doing something, to decline something. Well, abstemious, of course, very much means to refrain from doing something that you consider to be immoral or unnecessary in your life. That's what abstemious means. So again, when you think of words like abstemious, if you can link it to another word that has the same root, like abstain, and you actually know what that means, then abstemious becomes a lot easier to remember and memorize when you're focusing on building your vocabulary. All right, the other way you can remember vocabulary is using a sounds-like mnemonic device. Okay, so again, you can use a sounds-like principle. How does this work? Let's take a word like ponder. What does the word ponder mean? Again, say you've encountered this word, you don't know what it means, you're trying to figure out, how do I remember that ponder means to think deeply about something. That's what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to link the word with what it means. All right? Here's one way to do it. You can say that ponder sounds like something. And here you just use your creativity to think about what ponder might sound like. And I've come up with one myself. It's basically like if I were to go down to a pond, and I'm sitting by the pond, and I'm looking out into the pond, and I'm thinking deep thoughts, and I'm going, I look at the pond, I say pond, and then I think deep thoughts, and I go, So I'm going pond, You can have a physical gesture, pond, All right? Yeah, I know you're laughing at me, and that's cool. I'm okay with that. Laugh with me, right? Not at me, with me. So, again, the crazier it is, and the more ridiculous it is, and even your gesture being silly, your thought of being at a pond and saying is very silly, that's okay. In fact, the sillier the better. Because the more bizarre the example you can think of, the more memorable it's going to be. The more likely you're going to remember when you next encounter the word ponder that, oh yeah, that's that ponder thing where I'm thinking deep thoughts at a pond. So, again, even today, you're probably going to go home and tell your brother or your sister, man, this crazy guy was teaching us SAT and he's like, ponder, he's so ridiculous. But you know what? You just remembered what the word ponder means. It means to think deeply about something. So I've accomplished my goal, and you have accomplished your goal by increasing your vocabulary using a sounds like mnemonic device. All right. Another third way that you can really help yourself when you're trying to build your vocabulary is through memorizing the word in a phrase. Let's take the word abstemious, which we used before. What kind of word do you think could link together with abstemious? Abstemious is an adjective, so let's look at a noun. Something that is abstemious is describing, to be able to really solidify the meaning of that word so that if we remember it in a pair, it's going to really pop out and it'll be something that we do remember the meaning of. What word could we pair with abstemious to really get the meaning across? Any ideas? Okay, well, for me, I think of an abstemious monk. So monks, of course, live a very celibate life. They, try not to engage in the world. They're very much outside of the world. So that's a very good example of, abstaining from things. So an abstemious monk, if you can remember not just the word abstemious, but when you see abstemious, you think to yourself, abstemious monk. That's going to help you identify the true meaning of the word. Because monk is so synonymous with, you just associate with a monk the fact that they're not doing things. They're not eating rich food. They're not engaging in society. They're not watching your TV. They're not, having sex. Oh, yes, I did say sex. Sorry about that. But yes, so if you link abstemious with monk, and when you see the word abstemious, you link the two together all the time, you are going to remember that abstemious means self-denial. Okay. Another great example is like counterfeit. How many of you know counterfeit? Okay, about half of you. So for those of you who do not know counterfeit, the other half of you, here's one way to think about it. If I took counterfeit and I stuck it with the word money, counterfeit money. Now do you know what it means? Yeah, I'm seeing some hands raised. Do you see some head nods? Right, so when you fit a word that you don't know, like counterfeit, and you connect it with another word that together you do know what it means, counterfeit money, you understand to be fake money. Now you can remember the word, because when you see counterfeit, you think counterfeit money, and that makes you think it's fake money. And now you remember the definition of counterfeit is fake, right? So those are three strategies to just kind of kick off our discussion about sentence completion. We are going to get into reading comprehension a little bit later, and some of these things apply there as well, but I'm going to save that for another time. Any questions at this point? All right, well, I'm going to go on to another recommended strategy for dealing with sentence completion questions. If you guys will turn to page 4, we're going to talk about that right now.